The quiet drummer for Kiss, Eric Singer, was the last member of the famous band to still be alive, along with Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. Among other bands, Black Sabbath, Gary Moore, and Alice Cooper hired him to play drums. He played in front of more than 100,000 people, and then he quietly left backstage, like he had never been there. He wore Catman makeup, which became a sign for Peter Criss and made him a target of criticism for many years. Nevertheless, Hestede. No arguing back or putting on airs, just play steadily and accurately. Here we go. Eric Singer leaves the stage as Kiss ends a show that has been going on for more than 50 years. Is this the end of a stand-in or the rare portrait of an artist who decided to contribute rather than compete for the spotlight? There was no fanfare or tribute on any magazine cover. No explosions are happening in this story. It's the story of a man who kept the beat for a huge machine while everyone else looked at the people in front of him. Eric Singer, whose real name is Eric Doyle Mensinger, was born on May 12, 1958, in Cleveland, Ohio, into a family that loved music more than just music. Living that way was normal. Jack Mensinger, his father, was an experienced big band director who had played saxophone with many well-known orchestras in the 1940s and 1950s. He taught his son music instead of words. Everything in their house swirled around music, and mistakes were not allowed when it was playing. Eric lived in that world from a very young age. The sound of his father's saxophone could still be heard in the living room after long rehearsals, phone calls for bookings, and trips out of town. While other kids played sports or watched movies, Eric watched his dad write music, plan shows, and most importantly, listen to musicians and fix their time. Growing up wasn't fun. Growing up was quick because of the way he spent his youth. He got his first drum set when he was 11 years old. Soon after, his father let him try out for his own band, not because he liked him, but to see how good he was. Eric didn't play with emotion the first time he sat down at a real drum set. He played because he had to. He got in trouble for missing a beat. He was changed, so don't miss it again. He quickly learned what it means to act. Just having ability isn't enough. You have to be consistent. As a teenager, he spent hours in the garage repeating a single drum break, trying to control his weaker left hand, often the Achilles heel of right-handed drummers. He listened to everything, from Buddy Rich's jazz to Deep Purple's hard rock, and taught himself how to adapt his playing to whoever stood in front of him. Eric once said, "When you grow up in a serious music family, you're not taught how to be an artist. You're taught how not to be a clown." Maybe that's why throughout his career, he chose to be the foundation, never chasing the spotlight, never fighting for the mic, just making sure the band never missed a beat. His childhood, shaped by his father's silent discipline and the quiet expectations placed on a 13-year-old's hands, forged a drummer built to last. A man who never needed the stage to feel alive, only a beat to hit at the right time. Early career. After graduating from Euclid High School in 1976, Eric Singer didn't dive straight into the world of rock. He worked at King Musical Instruments, a manufacturer of brass and percussion instruments, where he spent hours inspecting and fine-tuning drums and horns. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it laid the foundation for Eric to understand the mechanical intricacies of sound. It was also where he met craftsmen with a pure love for instruments. While many young people rushed into garage bands chasing fame, Eric chose patience. He stayed behind and waited for his moment. The first turning point came in the early 1980s when Eric was invited to join several local bands and studio projects. Thanks to his strong sight-reading skills, precision, and quick adaptability to different styles, he became a trusted session drummer. Eric didn't have a flashy appearance, nor did he play with dramatic flair, but what drew artists to him was his reliability. He had never ruined a take. In 1984, Eric joined Lita Ford's band, former member of the Runaways, just as she was about to release her solo album, Dancing on the Edge. Though his role was limited to the tour, he made a strong impression with a playing style that was both explosive and disciplined. From there, more offers came in. He played with Gary Moore, with Paul Stanley in his solo project, and with Badlands, the band led by Jake E. Lee, former guitarist for Ozzy Osbourne. But the most significant milestone of his early career came in 1986, when Eric was called to join Black Sabbath as a replacement for Bill Ward. Though it wasn't the band's golden era, for Eric it was a defining moment. He had officially stepped into the ranks of the top professional drummers in heavy metal. The eternal idol, 1987, was the first album to feature his work, and the global tour that followed opened up a solid network of industry connections. Throughout the 1980s, Eric was never the frontman, but he was always present at crucial intersections of rock and metal. He was the drummer artists turned to when they needed precision, someone who wouldn't make mistakes on stage and who knew how to step back so others could shine. His career didn't begin with a bang. It began with steady, quiet beats, just like the man himself. And that's why, when Kiss needed a new drummer after the death of Eric Carr, only one name came up first: Eric Singer. Successful career. When Eric Singer joined Kiss in 1991, it wasn't just a major step in his career. It was a role that demanded near-perfect precision. The man he replaced, Eric Carr, wasn't just a skilled drummer. He was a beloved symbol to Kiss fans. Carr had just passed away after a long battle with heart cancer. Meanwhile, Kiss was undergoing a period of rebuilding after years of turmoil and commercial setbacks throughout the 1980s. They didn't just need a good drummer. They needed someone steady enough to help the band survive. Eric delivered on his first album with the band Revenge 1992. Kiss transformed. The music was harder, the lyrics more intense, and Eric's drumming anchored all that energy. The hit track Unholy, with its bold and punchy drum intro, was a clear declaration. Kiss was back, with a darker, heavier, more aggressive spirit. Eric didn't seek the spotlight, but with that first beat, he made it clear. He hadn't come to replace, he came to rebuild. He continued with the band on Alive the Fur, 1993, and Kiss My Ass, 1994. On global tours, Eric became the foundation that allowed Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley to explode at the front of the stage. While Kiss was known for fire, smoke, makeup, fake blood, and flying stunts, without a drummer holding it all together with rock-solid timing, it would have all fallen apart. However, in 1996, the band announced a reunion of the original lineup and brought back Peter Criss. Eric stepped aside, quietly, professionally, without protest. From 1996 to 2001, he returned to being a hired drummer for Alice Cooper, where he not only kept time, but also contributed heavily to show production. Cooper once praised him as the steadiest, most dependable drummer I've ever worked with. In 2001, Criss left again, and once more, Kiss turned to Eric Singer. But this time, everything had changed. He didn't appear as himself, but in full Catman makeup, the iconic persona associated with Criss. This caused a stir among fans. Some called it an insult to a legend. Others insisted, if not Eric, no one else deserves it more. Eric didn't argue. In an interview, he simply said, "I'm not here to impersonate Peter Criss. I'm here to make sure the show doesn't fall apart." And that's exactly what he did for over 20 years. Since Sonic Boom 2009 and Monster 2012, Eric has not only drummed, he's also sung. The track, All for the Glory, marked the first time in Kiss history that a third drummer sang lead vocals. With a rich, warm, and energetic voice, Eric surprised audiences. He didn't need to be Paul Stanley, didn't need to act like anyone else. He just had to be himself. Moreover, he played a critical role in the end of the road tour. The band's farewell tour from 2019 to the end of 2023. As the original members began to show their age, and the shows demanded greater precision than ever, Eric became the one who ensured nothing fell out of sync. He was the inner clockwork of the dazzling machine called Kiss, the mechanism that kept it all running on time despite the fireworks and lights. No solo album, no memoir, no media blitz. But quietly, Eric Singer wrote a chapter in Kiss's history that cannot be overlooked. The chapter of stability, professionalism, and an artist who never cracked under pressure, nor got swept up in the noise. His successful career wasn't built by standing in the spotlight, but by holding up the stage so others could shine. And in an industry where ego often drowns out the music, Eric Singer, the silent timekeeper, might just be the most important figure few ever truly noticed. Personal life, though he's a member of one of the most flamboyant bands in rock history, Eric Singer's private life remains unusually discreet. While his bandmates and peers often made headlines for scandals, wild parties, or turbulent romances, Eric consistently chose silence. In over 4 decades in the music industry, he has rarely shared anything about what happens behind the scenes, and perhaps it's that very silence that makes people even more curious. Eric has gone through at least one marriage in the past, but he has never made the details of that relationship public. In the mid-2000s, he dated a German woman, someone outside the music business, known for her quiet lifestyle. But after about a year, the relationship quietly ended. No hand-in-hand photos, no post-breakup statements, no media management like many other artists. Everything passed just as he lives, clean, composed, and without chaos. It wasn't until Valentine's Day 2023 that fans got a rare glimpse into his private world. On his personal Instagram, Eric posted a simple photo with Geraldine Schofield, the woman who had been by his side for over 13 years, accompanied by a short caption, 13 years, and still just as great as day one. No luxury, no diamond ring, no lavish dinner, just a quiet confirmation that he had found peace. And for someone like Eric, that might be the most profound kind of romance. Outside of music, Eric immerses himself in mechanical passions. He is an avid and meticulous wristwatch collector, especially drawn to rare and complex mechanical timepieces. He has attended several industry events like Basel World, not as a celebrity, but as a genuine enthusiast of fine engineering. Beyond watches, he also loves vintage cars and has spent countless hours restoring engine parts by hand. No children, no grand wedding, no tabloid love affairs. In the loud world of rock, Eric Singer lives like a low, steady note. Quiet, deep and strong enough to keep the whole song from falling apart. To him, the stage is a place of work. Private life doesn't need an audience. And perhaps that's why, after all these years, he has managed to hold on to what so many artists lose: true freedom in both love and self. Controversies and behind the scenes. In a career that seemed mostly quiet, the one thing that repeatedly pushed Eric Singer into the center of controversy wasn't his drumming, but the black and white makeup on his face. The Catman. The Catman persona was originally created and made iconic by founding drummer Peter Criss, one of the original members of Kiss, alongside Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. When Criss left the band, Eric was invited back in 2001. The band decided he would also take on the Catman image. For many devoted fans, this wasn't just a replacement. It was seen as a violation of the band's original legacy. To them, Peter Criss was the one and only Catman. Anyone else, no matter how skilled, was simply an impersonator. The backlash was immediate. Some fans threatened to boycott the tour. The media highlighted the symbolic battle between Eric Singer and the legacy of Criss. Meanwhile, Eric remained silent. No public reactions, no interviews to defend himself. He simply continued to perform, wearing the very makeup that kept drawing comparisons. It wasn't until years later that Eric finally addressed the controversy in a rare interview. But the controversy didn't end there. In 2022, during a show on the End of the Road tour in Antwerp, Belgium, a video clip went viral on social media showing the band seemingly offbeat with the drums out of sync with the rest of the instruments. Speculation exploded. Was Kiss using backing tracks, pre-recorded parts during their live shows? And if so, was Eric the one keeping time to something fake? Fans debated fiercely. The media dissected every frame. Kiss, true to their nature, gave no explanation. Neither did Eric. People close to the band later stated it was merely a technical glitch caused by a delayed stage signal with no cheating involved. But once doubt is planted, truth doesn't always get heard. Beyond the controversies, there are lesser-known backstage stories that reveal a very different side of Eric Singer. Like the time he stayed nearly 3 hours after a performance at a Kiss convention just to sign autographs for every single fan, even after the venue was cleared, or when he gave away one of his snare drums to a young fan who couldn't afford a VIP ticket, simply because that kid kept perfect time air drumming to every song I played. Eric has never been one to stir scandal, but he's weathered storms, not with words, but with patience. While many artists choose to lash out or walk away when under fire, Eric chose the one method he's always trusted. Go on stage, put on the makeup, and play as if nothing was wrong. And that very resolve, that silent strength, is what allowed him to survive the wars over identity, media noise, and the relentless pressure of one of the most demanding fan bases in the world. Legacy and impact in a band where every member is a pop culture icon, where image often outweighs sound, Eric Singer stands as an exception. He didn't create Kiss. His name isn't etched onto the legendary albums of the 1970s, And he wasn't the first to wear the Catman makeup. But for over 30 years, he has been the one keeping time for that entire legacy, precisely steadily, never missing a beat. Eric's legacy doesn't lie in innovation. It lies in continuity. In a music world where everything is constantly replaced, he is living proof that you don't need to be in the spotlight to be essential. Eric helped Kiss stay afloat through the death of Eric Carr, the departure of Peter Criss, the exit of Ace Frehley, and even the aging of Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley as their energy inevitably waned. Beyond Kiss, Eric played pivotal roles with other major artists, from Lita Ford and Gary Moore to Black Sabbath and Alice Cooper. In each case, he was brought in not for fame, but for trust, the most valuable currency for a performing musician. Drummer Vinny Appice once said, "If you want someone who won't screw up the show, call Eric." His influence reaches beyond the industry. Among young drummers, Eric Singer is a model for what it means to be a professional musician. No need to show off, no gimmicks, just be on time, on beat, and on point. Behind-the-scenes videos and rehearsal recordings he's part of are still circulated today as instructional material on group dynamics and professional timekeeping. Modern drummers like Matt Starr, Mr. Big, Glenn Sobel, Alice Cooper, and even fans like Mike Portnoy have all mentioned Eric as a kind of anti-distraction, someone who never hogs the spotlight, yet somehow makes the entire stage feel more stable simply by being there. Eric is also proof of another kind of influence, the kind that doesn't require fame. He doesn't need millions of social media followers. He doesn't need viral sound bites. But when Kiss took their final bow in 2023 and the three men left standing were Gene, Paul, and Eric, it became clear for a legacy to survive until the very end, it takes more than star power. It takes dedication, precision, and a heart, unshaken by outside noise. That's what Eric Singer leaves behind. A standard. A reminder that rock isn't just about fire and blood. It's also about discipline, foundation, and the quiet beat that lets others explode. And within the vast legacy of Kiss, there is a heartbeat, named Eric Singer, that never stopped playing. Current life after Kiss's farewell performance at the end of 2023, it seemed Eric Singer might quietly step away from the stage for good. But entering 2024 and 2025, he proved he wasn't truly retiring. He was simply shifting to a different rhythm, slower, more selective, and more personally meaningful than ever before. In December 2024, Eric made a return, not for a tour, not for a grand stage, but for a charity event titled Kiss Cancer Goodbye 3 in Sarasota, Florida. The three-day fundraiser supported the American Cancer Society and featured familiar faces like former Kiss guitarist Bruce Kulick, Anton Fig, Todd Kerns, and Chris Jericho. There were no pyrotechnics, no theatrical stunts, but Eric's drums echoed that night for something greater than music itself, life. In early 2025, Eric reconnected with fans in a more intimate, down-to-earth way. On February 1st, he took part in the Kiss Live Auctions online event, where he shared and auctioned off personal memorabilia, including drums, stage accessories, and items from his decades with the band. More than collectibles, each item came with a story, told by Eric himself, like a quiet farewell to those who had followed him for more than 30 years. But the most anticipated moment came in November 2025. Kiss Army storms Vegas, a special reunion performance at Virgin Hotels Las Vegas. For the first time since the end of the road tour, Eric Singer, Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, and Tommy Thayer shared the stage again. No makeup, no masks, just four men standing before the audience as themselves, not behind personas, but with authenticity. For many longtime fans, it wasn't just a concert, it was a rare emotional connection where past and present met without theatrical disguise. Beyond these select appearances, Eric has lived in near seclusion, just as he always has. He now spends most of his time at home immersed in his love for mechanical watches, restoring vintage cars, and enjoying a quiet life alongside his longtime partner, Geraldine Schofield. His occasional Instagram posts, sometimes just a morning coffee, a vintage gear mechanism, or a view from behind the wheel, are enough to let fans know he's living the life he chose. No more Kiss, no more Catman. But Eric Singer has never lost himself. And now, with no need to keep time for anyone else, he's finally able to hear his own rhythm. Slower, quieter, but no less profound. A new chapter. free from the spotlight, yet worthy of just as much respect as everything he ever played on stage. Eric Singer didn't create Kiss. He didn't write Rock and Roll All Night, wasn't the first face on the posters, and never stood front and center at the mic to make the whole crowd roar. But as the makeup began to fade, as the founding members gradually stepped down or could no longer perform, it was Eric who kept the ship from derailing. Quiet. Precisely, never missing a beat. His career wasn't flashy, but it was relentless. He isn't a legend in the traditional sense, but he's the one who helped the legend last longer. When the screaming fades, when the lights go out, when all the egos have stepped away, what remains is the steady heartbeat at the center. And that was Eric Singer. He chose to step out of the spotlight the same way he stepped into it, without noise, without fanfare. But without him, Kiss wouldn't have been able to close their journey as completely as they did. And in a world that often only remembers the brightest names, there will always be a place for someone like Eric, the man who kept time for a legend without needing to become one. Because sometimes the greatest people are the ones who never tried to be remembered. They just did their job perfectly and quietly stepped away, like Eric Singer. What do you think of Eric Singer's quiet but enduring journey? What impresses you most about him? His flawless precision, his professional spirit, or the way he kept the heartbeat of a legend going until the very end? Share your thoughts and memories of Eric in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe to join us as we uncover more untold stories of the artists who shaped rock history, not just with spotlight, but with unshakable dedication. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Goodbye.